The Brewhouse was created to capture and share with you the long history of the Genesee Brewery. But the brewery itself isn't half as interesting as the beer and the people who make it. Visit GeneseeBrewhouse.com. Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us. This is the Rochester Press Box, presented by the Genesee Brewhouse. And it's great to have old friend Kevin Oklobzija back.
Great to be here again.
Old friend, that was for you.
Yeah.
Mike Catalana, of course, co-hosting here with Pat Duffy, who is decked out in Milwaukee Bucks gear.
Yep, 2004 game-worn Milwaukee Bucks warm-up jacket. Fear the deer, Bill. Fear the deer.
How can you game wear a warm-up jacket?
Okay, you know what I mean. There was a game happening and you can wear a jacket on the bench while the game is going on.
Good point.
I do not. I'm going to assume it's Glenn Robinson, even though he wasn't playing there then.
Let's play nice. Hey, journalists had kind of a tough week this week, Kevin. I got Jemele Hill is leaving ESPN for taking political stances on the air, and Michele Beadle darn near committed career suicide by being on the morning show on ESPN and essentially stating, it says, I'm done with football based on the Urban Meyer.
Suicide.
That notwithstanding, the fact is you can't say those things, and yet we almost have to these days.
Yes and no. I mean, that's the problem. If you do say something, there's going to be quite a percentage of people who disagree and will be screaming and yelling. If you don't say anything, as Tiger has done in issues all his career, really.
Man, it got ripped this week. Christine Brennan, nationally, USA Today, essentially just called him out for having no opinion.
Right. But if he has an opinion, you can't win. You really can't win. So Jemele Hill, I think she's really good. I like her. I have from the beginning, way back when it was whatever show that was, Cold Pizza or whatever they called it way back on ESPN2. I thought it was a really good show. This thing that Michele Beadle ended up on in the morning with Greenberg is horrible. What a waste of hours.
I know you love this stuff.
I don't really love it in this sense. To your point about making political comments and all, you reserve the right to do that. I also believe people follow you or watch you based on your job. Now, you are entitled to other opinions, but sometimes there's repercussions that come with it. There's opinions, and then, Jemele Hill went pretty far down the line. I mean, she referred to the president as white supremacist. Now, people all have their opinions, but you're an ESPN host saying that, so she had her issues. Now, and I'll also go down the point of saying, to Kevin's point, Michele Beadle's show is an abject failure, and there is no great shakes there at ESPN to push her out the door in that sense. And Jemele Hill sort of went down that line too, and I think she wants to go in another direction with her career. So I think there's
$1 million she will leave ESPN with.
Yes.
$1 million she got.
Yes. So there is career decisions going into this too.
Keep trying.
These days, I don't know how you do what you do.
Well, I mean,
and walking the line that you have to walk.
Well, I don't know. I like to think on the break room when we do our thing, we stay pretty far in the middle. I don't trust anybody, so it's not hard to, it's criticize both sides. But Mike, to your point, you're right. You take a risk in making a statement when you're in a position like that. That being said, for years, in fact, up until only 2 or 3 years ago, these companies pushed their talent to make statements like that. You became a personality when you stepped outside of the
morning shows, especially. You had to go across the line.
Yes.
By yards.
But not even in offensive content, right? Like Michele Beadle and Jemele Hill and your Stephen A. Smiths and all of these guys that became famous for stepping outside of the box in sports and making very easy commentary, things that weren't hard to hate. You shouldn't hit women, obviously. Cancer is bad, obviously. And as things got more complicated and these people had already established that they had opinions, well, you can't just stop having opinions, so you kind of get caught in a catch-22.
Well, Pat, in the show he does, you're really entitled to comment on almost anything.
It's very different.
Plus, you also are a comedian, so you can use the ability that you can sort of make jokes about it. You have to be careful in how you phrase those things, too. To that point, politically, like I said, you are entitled to have your opinion. How far down the line do you want to go? How political do you want to get? And in the context of on your show on ESPN saying these things does open you up to criticism that is understandable to a certain degree because you're in that element. I mean, it's a little different for my case. I'm on a newscast.
I wanted to ask you to jump in and just say, what guidelines have you been given? Have you been told?
Not a word.
Don't do.
Not a word. But at the same time,
Well,
I
don't
can't
understand. They know you understand the parameters and are
But he
smart
could say
enough
whatever
to.
he wanted here. Would this have
That's true.
repercussions?
No, I guess it would depend. I would guess it would depend if I went down a line. The bigger question usually is in social media. And every once in a while you make a comment. I tweeted out one time, as I thought it was it was also sports related and political, about the fact that Donald Trump has a vendetta against, or use the word vendetta, against the NFL. He's a guy who sued the NFL, a guy who tried to buy an NFL team. So you can't hide from the fact, from a sports perspective, that Donald Trump does not like the NFL, and maybe that clouds the way he looks at the whole national anthem policy. And I got people coming at me with politics. I didn't follow you for politics and all. Yeah, can you imagine that?
If you thought he was a racist, would you feel comfortable saying that?
No, I wouldn't say that in my forum as a sports anchor, sports reporter, and someone to comment. I think there's certain things you can say, but let's be honest, it's not really bright to say that, I think, if you want to go down that road, unless you are big enough. LeBron James can say almost anything. He is the biggest entity in sports. LeBron James can get away with that. I had to say, Jemele Hill can't get away with that.
But here's the thing, it's all about perspective, too. Like, no offense to Mike, I don't really care about what you have to say about politics,
I agree
right?
with
and
you, yeah.
no one should care about what I have to say about politics, but Jemele Hill has a perspective on what she stated, and that perspective's understandable. Michele Beadle, 100%. In fact, although I don't agree with what Michele Beadle did career-wise, I respect that she has that much conviction, that she feels this way and sees a hypocrisy and doesn't want to deal with it anymore. And how does ESPN now justify her legitimate stance by telling her she can no longer have a job for what she said? I think that these all raise very interesting questions.
I think ESPN has every right to say that, because you're hired to come and work on ESPN as a sports commentator and reporter in the morning, and the NFL and college football is a huge portion of it.
You're 100% fine. Then don't give me these heartwarming stories at the ESPYs of these people that have overcome tragedy and amazing things when you might be facilitating tragedy and horrible things to make money.
This is the Rochester Press Box. We are presented by the Genesee Brew House. We'll talk about the Buffalo Bills next. The Press Box, brought to you in part by Connors and Ferris, your workers' comp attorneys. Call 262-COMP, C-O-M-P, today. Welcome back, and thanks for joining us. This is the Rochester Press Box, presented by the Genesee Brew House. This portion brought to you by Connors and Ferris. Through this whole process, with all that happened in the third preseason game, have we learned anything about this Buffalo Bills team that we didn't know coming in?
What have we learned about them? We've learned that they have a lot to prove offensively. They're going to be a struggle offensively no matter who is playing quarterback. But I go back to the same thing again. This is not normal in terms of the way they're looking at the quarterbacks and the offense. They are, to some extent, doing everything based on Josh Allen. So I think if you look at Josh Allen, there's people that say, throw him out there, let him play, which could happen, right? They could still decide to do that. But the problem is the team around him is not ready for a rookie quarterback. And I think, as I've been saying all along...
Don't you dare, because you're wrong, and it proved it this weekend.
No, I thought it was going to be McCarron before then. McCarron got hurt. And Peterman has stayed. I give him credit. He has stayed steady as can be, which if you're going to have a placeholder, they're going to go with the steady guy. That team and that offensive line and the wide receiver position is not ready for a rookie quarterback. If they put him in there, I think it makes it even harder. And I think the hope is that maybe part of the way or halfway through the season, the team's a little more stable and they can give him some time.
I'll tell you what I learned at the preseason game, Bill. I'll tell you what I learned. That never was there, nor has there ever been, a plan by this coaching staff and general manager, bro. They got fooled by the rookie's arm. And I get it when fans do it, and I get it even when you and I, who think we know things, get fooled by it. But when the head coach decides to give a kid a start based on 12 drives against third and second string teamers, when they were planning to start Peterman all along, it tells me that that might be a swipe of desperation, and that makes me nervous, Mike.
No, they had three quarterbacks, and three of them got starts during the preseason. And
Okay.
and they did want to see Josh Allen in that setting.
If that was the plan, you
Go ahead.
put Nate Peterman in a really bad spot, because if he is a starting quarterback, he's got 2 starts, 2 games at which he left early anyway, and you took away reps with the first team in the 3rd game. So if that was the plan, it was a horrible plan. Come on, Mike, admit it. The more that you see, the more you have to admit there's no plan here. They're flying by the seat of their pants.
These guys
Absolutely,
have been
totally
doing
the
this
opposite.
for weeks, and I feel left out
Yeah.
too. If you've got something to add to the conversation.
Oh, I'm enjoying this. How can I add? Why would I want to add? This is too much fun.
Now, what did you make of it all? Could it have gone worse for Allen?
No, but if behind that line, with no one to throw to, in an NFL situation where you have to have reads and be able to move and think and process, he's not ready. He can't do it.
I don't necessarily blame it. First of all, I blame
I'm not
very
blaming
little
it on
on
Josh
him.
Allen, but
Secondly, no one to throw to. He does have Charles Clay out there. He did have Kelvin Benjamin. He does have Zay Jones. He had guys to throw. It was absurd how little time he had. Now, I give him blame a couple of times when he held the ball too long. But if you want to see a silver lining in this at all, at least the Bills have a young quarterback who is thinking about trying to get the ball down the field.
at least
and
they
I
have
think,
a high draft pick next year, too.
yeah, I mean, that's true. But I mean,
be
the idea.
very high.
Yeah, but the idea behind that, it's funny. 6 days before, there were people, because he had looked good in the game and thinking differently. They go way up and then way down. Honestly, I think the idea was to get him on the field. I think he would have had to been really good in that game in order to be the number 1 guy. So I think Peterman's going to start.
All part of the plan, right?
It is part of the plan.
Yeah.
This is the Rochester Press Box, presented by the Genesee Brew House. This portion brought to you by Connors and Ferris. Like it or not is next. Here's the Press Box trivia question, brought to you by Market View Liquor, where exceptional customer service meets an extensive selection. Jefferson Road at 390. Here's the Press Box trivia answer, brought to you by Market View Liquor, where exceptional customer service meets an extensive selection. Jefferson Road at 390. Welcome back. This is the Rochester Press Box, presented by the Genesee Brew House. Like it or not, we kind of touched on it, but we didn't bring him up very much. Like him or not, AJ McCarron's future with the Buffalo Bills.
Oh, I don't think there is a future with the Buffalo Bills. I mean, by giving Josh Allen that start in the 3rd preseason game, you've shown that, okay, he also may be damaged goods too, right? You don't know what's going on with that shoulder. You're not going to keep 3 quarterbacks. The roster spots in this league have become far too valuable. And further than that, McDermott loves a guy who is versatile. I think he's cut. I don't think there's any trade value in AJ McCarron.
It could be. There could be something. It's all part of the plan.
Why is the national perception on the Buffalo Bills so different? I mean,
'Cause
both
they
guys.
don't watch the games.
Yeah, but they study.
They don't watch the games.
That's
I mean,
supposed to
I saw the
study. Now,
guys-
both of those guys endorsed McCarron as the Bills starter week 1.
Honestly, I don't know if they went to a production meeting, or I do know from being in those meetings, Sean McDermott does not give up a lot in those meetings. But I mean, come on, ask anybody who's around the team. They would have probably told you, you know how much they like Peterman, and Allen has shown them a ton. Exactly why they went with, you know what part of it is too, is because the national perception, which understandably is on Nate Peterman, 5 interception guy, and that's all they think of it. No,
That's
well,
all they know.
And why should they? If you're looking from the outside, why would you not let that go? But we know they think a little differently about it.
Does it bother you as like a guy who's a beat reporter for various teams here in Rochester, when the outside perception is so different than what you know to be the case?
No, I mean, and for Rochester, it's different. But even like if it was the Sabres perspective and a national perspective, you're going to always say, well, what do they know? Who have they talked to? I mean, there's people that are well connected. I mean, certainly. So you have to you have to look at where that national opinion came from, who it was. If it's the guys on the air who aren't necessarily covering the team, then
they have clout. It makes me crazy. When I
Well,
hear
here's
this stuff, it
a
makes me
good
crazy.
example.
if it's Adam Schefter,
Right.
okay.
Yeah. No disrespect to your former employee, but they put out a USA Today article. Now, look, we all know the Bills struggle at quarterback and offensive line, but some analyst for USA Today, who I'd never heard of, nothing personal against the guy, is ranking the Bills' offensive line and quarterbacks as the worst in the NFL. He's no connections to the team. Like you said, it's not Peter King, it's not Adam Schefter, it's generic guy, but they get a little more attention from the outside looking in.
This is the Rochester Press Box, presented by the Genesee Brewhouse. Unfinished Business is next.
Here is the MVP Experience Stat of the Week, brought to you by Sport Clips, where it's good to be a guy. No appointment ever needed.
Came now to Eichel. He floated one.
Look at those guys, triumphing over the afternoon.
Because he went on a Dunkin' run and got $2 snacks.
Hey, guys.
Hey.
The Dunkin' Run menu. Delicious $2 afternoon snacks.
Welcome back. Thanks for joining us. This is the Rochester Press Box, presented by the Genesee Brewhouse. Unfinished Business, presented by Dunkin' Donuts. America runs on Dunkin'. Pat.
Kevin, this one's for you. I'm reading an article over the weekend about how Arizona hockey is on its way in, and they start listing how great the teams are doing and how all the alumni of the Coyotes are staying in Arizona, and Austin Matthews is doing great for the Leafs. And you know what else they included in that article? Arizona is doing so well, the state. They have 9 hockey rinks in the state of Arizona. We have 9 hockey rinks in the greater Rochester area, 11 if you count Batavia and Canandaigua. And I don't mean pads of ice, I mean rinks with multiple ice on the inside. There is a reason why that happens. I mean, hockey's very popular in this town. You need to take advantage of that. If you have a kid, take them out ice skating and see how much they like it, because it is something you can do all winter long. I guess the reason I'm so fired up is, as we speak right now, my 8-year-old, she's at hockey camp, all-day hockey camp. And her entire life playing hockey, it's always been feast or famine. She either really wants to go or doesn't want anything to do with it. And for the first time in her life, the last 3 weeks, she's been pumped to go to hockey. I'm excited, not because she's any good, she's got my hands, but because she loves the sport like I love the sport, and we live in a community where you can excel doing it and have fun. Go to the rink, grab a hockey stick, spend some time with your kid.
I don't think I ever got away from thinking that hockey has to be played in a place where ice exists.
Well, yeah,
realize cold weather.
It makes sense to me. And it's not even including, Kevin, all of the outdoor rinks you can go participate in that the city runs during the wintertime.
Or your backyard.
Yeah.
Soccer. And our soccer team and the owners, the Dworkins, have decided we're not going to play this year. However, next year, 2019, or 2020 is it? 2019?
2020.
Yeah, 2020, they're going to have a Division III team. And they're going to build a new stadium. Another stadium. There can't be one tax dollar that goes to the stadium. If they want to build it, somebody wants to build it, fine. Make it a private venture. But tax money for another soccer stadium, when we'll now have an abandoned one downtown, is about as foolish a thing as it makes no sense. If someone has that much money to throw away, God bless them.
The only thing worse that we're talking about is the only thing worse than another soccer stadium is another soccer team, maybe.
I mean, that's fine, but the support isn't there. They tried. If it comes back, great. It was once the most popular thing this town had, and it was fun to go to a game at Frontier Field. I don't know what brings that back. Maybe nothing. But do you have the money to get those kinds of players anymore? No. They'll never have that talent. Now they want to go down a level. Go watch
Demise of soccer in this town is the biggest puzzle of my time here in Rochester.
Go watch the Lancers. It will be about the same thing. And I think the Lancers put on a pretty good product with Soccer Sam.
Well, you have a lot of issues there, location being the worst one. And everybody knows it, whether it's perception or reality. People didn't want to go to that stadium, and they never have. I'm going to go back to the NFL real quick, and a decision made by the New York Giants. Sort of had to make, right? They signed Odell Beckham Jr. to a mega deal, a quarterback deal. Look, he is the star of that franchise. Makes every reason in the world. They were never really going to trade him, right? Beckham is going to be the guy there. But now they're invested. You know who they're really invested in? Eli Manning. Because the way this deal is set up, yeah, they went with Saquon Barkley, who looks like he could be a dynamic running back, and Odell. But this only really works, is if Eli reverses what we've seen the last few years. Look, the guy has talent, he has ability, we've seen it before, but it seems like he needs it around him more than some of the other guys do. You can try to compare him to Brady in terms of staying in the game, but Brady, for years, has elevated players around him. Aaron Rodgers, a little bit younger, he elevates players around him. I don't know if Eli does that, but now they've invested in Odell. It's going to be his team. Let's see if Eli can make that money, smart money, for the New York Giants.
No matter how good Saquon Barkley becomes, I think the Giants will rue the day they didn't pick a quarterback on that draft.
Well, and it could really come back to haunt him if Sam Darnold ends up being good because he's playing right in the same stadium in the same city.
This is the Rochester Press Box presented by the Genesee Brewhouse, and this portion, Unfinished Business, brought to you by Dunkin' Donuts. Kevin, great as always. Good to have you. Good
Hey, great to be here.
Mike,
Yep.
Pat, thank you. Thank you for joining us. See you next week with the Rochester Press Box.